good morning, good evening, good afternoon, depending upon the time zone we are joining in to this edition, which is 32nd edition of GI4QC Forum online uh, panel discussion or expert session. Today we are having an expert session, and so Kavan actually doesn't require a big introduction because he has been associated with our forum for I think 2+ years and very working on a very interesting area. The good part is today we will have an opportunity to listen to him. So as a customary, let me introduce the GI4QC Forum to the members who are probably joining for the first time. So GI4QC Forum this month completed 3 years of its registration as an NGO, Section 8 company. This forum is in existence for 4+ years. This forum started with a vision to rediscover and apply the elements of ancient knowledge systems to resolve the existing mystery of science and nature. And to achieve this vision, the forum put across 4-point mission statement. And the foremost mission statement was that we will become a forum, the most respected and valued network association known for unhindered exchange of ideas. So we do not want to start with any bias or any specific alignment to any kind of a thinking or any kind of a following. Secondly, the idea was that we don't want to reinvent the wheel, rather identify the work which is being done, which is aligned to our vision statement, and onboard them and make it a network of network. The second mission statement, which was put up because when we were in the formative stage, also we came to know that a lot of work is being done in this spiritual scientific domain, or what we call as a integrated approach to spirituality and science, but not enough opportunities for publication or peer review was available. So we said that we would like to highlight and publish the credible evidence-based results of the research and study projects. And to do that, we last year came up with this International Journal on Eternal Wisdom and Contemporary Science. The third edition is imminent. We have also applied for ISSN number, which we'll get by this month end. The third mission statement, which was again in the formative years itself, the founders thought that a lot of research gets done, but it just gets into the Almira. But we said this organization will not stop at just doing the research or creating the content, but we would like that this content actually reaches to the right user. So the mission statement was develop spin-off technologies which enhance the happiness index of the individuals as well as the society. And they are also aligned with the United Nations sustainability goals. So whatever work we are doing, whatever content we are creating or curating or collecting, that content should finally be utilized to convert it into a device or a technology or a course or a program or sessions, which then go to the right recipient. And the right recipient we have identified is our youth. So if we can take it to the youth of this country, then, or rather why country, the entire youth at a global level, then the future of the humanity can be very well managed and maintained and effectively sustained. And then the other statement was because the whole inspiration was coming from, one is that, as I said, integrated approach to science and spirituality. The second inspiration was the work being done at the Princeton University. One of the founding members had been involved in that studies of mind over matter experiments. So we said conduct innovative, cutting edge experiments to ascertain the potential impact of observers' conscious intent on the observed outcome. And today's session is also going to cover some of these aspects of how the observer makes an impact on the observation. So without taking further time, let me introduce today's topic and the speaker. So topic of the day is the intention versus attention game. I think the whole life is all about intention and attention. I may call it AI, but not artificial intelligence, but attention and intention. So this attention and intention game a mathematical framework for observing consciousness dynamics. Again, we have been talking about Purush and Maya, and there are many methods are available in our scriptures. You can have a Sankhya model, you can have a Bhakti model, and all those models are available. But today we're going to listen from Kavan, a mathematical framework. I think when we say the scientific mindset, we always talk about mathematics. And to share his work, which he has presented at the recent conference of Mind Body Consciousness Conference at IIT Mandi is the base on which he's going to present. So I'm pleased to welcome Kavan Ganapathy K P. Warm welcome to you. He's a consciousness researcher, remote viewing analyst, TRNG, which is true random number generator, experimentalist. And this true random number generation experiment is all what Princeton was also doing in terms of the conscious intent impact on the matter. So Kavan is a dedicated and innovative researcher with more than 6 years of hands-on experience in parapsychology, random number generation, and consciousness studies. His work spans global consciousness project. So I know in the last couple of years, there is a big interest at a global level to do the consciousness studies. We all know about the hard problem of consciousness being talked about. So he is associated with all those studies and he's trying to replicate them in India. Remote viewing is a very, I would say, topic to his heart. And I know sometime back we had some idea of remote viewing. So today we will probably have a more interesting input on that. And finally, he actually is working on merging the traditional scientific methods with cutting-edge noetic theory. So some frameworks also he has developed. Today only I was just going through that integrated approach of thinking. And finally, he is the founder member of pattern-space.ai. So on one side, we started talking about parapsychology, and other side, we are talking of the AI. So this gives you the perspective that how much the width we are going to cover today. So we are looking forward to listen to Kavan. The structure will be, he has a formal presentation. So for maybe 20-25 minutes or max 30 minutes, he will take us through the presentation and then we will open for discussion. Because the topic is very complex. So if we start asking questions probably in between, the flow may get disturbed. So I would request Kavan to first please take us through your subject, and then we will request participants to ask questions. And with this, once again, warm welcome. My name is Anand Prakash, one of the founding member for GI4QC Forum. Extend a warm welcome to Kavan and all the participants today on this 30-second session. Thank you very much. Over to you.
So namaste. Thank you. Thanks a lot. I'm very happy to meet all of you today. Thank you for taking your time off in your busy schedule. So today I will be covering some very interesting topics that which is very close to my heart, which has been remote viewing, which has been aspects of healing, and how human intention has effect on physical matter. Right. So these three topics were very close to my heart, as Anand sir was speaking of. And it's been a very interesting research journey that I've gone through. And here I believe there's a humble effect to see patterns between these consciousness dynamics. So without further ado, let's get into the topic. So once I finish the presentation, we will also have some time, I believe, to go through the pattern space AI research introduction that we can go through. I can show you that as well. And yeah. So yeah, can you see this, sir? Can anybody confirm if they can see this?
Yeah, it is visible. You can put it on a display. Yeah, full display. Yeah.
Yeah. So fantastic. This should be, right? Yeah. Fantastic. Perfect. Wonderful. So a very warm welcome to everyone. My name is Kavan Ganapathy. Today, I will be speaking on the topic intention versus attention game, a mathematical framework for observing consciousness dynamics. Uh, I happen to be a consciousness researcher associated with GI4QC Forum, also a founding member of Pattern Space AI, and a professional remote viewer in the HRVG methodology. Right. So before we get into the discussion today, I'd like to begin my train of thought with the idea or the question of what is consciousness. Right. So I'd first like to quote Professor Michio Kaku, a renowned theoretical physicist, who goes on to say that consciousness is a number of feedback loops that is required to create a model of a person's position in space-time and in relation to other organisms. A certain computational emergent description of consciousness, let's say, to begin with. When we start beginning with physical systems, it's necessary we define the nature of what is meant to be consciousness, let's say. So what he means by this is that if you have a thermometer, which is essentially designed to give you feedback of the temperature fluctuations, right? So that is a device which is engineered to have, it has a specific input and gives you a certain output. Like there goes one feedback loop, which is constrained only to a certain limited information space, like the temperature fluctuation. It cannot per se measure electricity and things like that. Whereas when it comes to complex systems like us, human beings, there might be existence of n number of feedback loops. Is the whole idea here that probably Michio Kaku is proposing, and that is what we will eventually take this on towards, right? So on the other side, if we look at the Vedic description of consciousness or chitta is the universal awareness that underlies all phenomena, serving as the basis. It is essentially referred to as a fundamental frame of reference for both subjective and objective reality, right? So that is the base foundation, where in modern research context, we can say the Jagrat or the waking state is characterized at alpha or the beta frequencies, Swapna at the dream state, around the theta brainwave, 4 to 8 hertz, Shushupti at deep sleep states, and then you have Turiya, which is a still debatable state of consciousness, which is representing pure consciousness, where one realizes their unity with all existence, right? Which is further characterized as, they're very little experiments, they're very, the sample space of, to capture, this kind of a phenomena is very less. And hence, there are limitations in how we define these states as well, right? So this has been a certain way in which the Vedic context of things has observed consciousness, let's say, right? So we are, what I'm trying to do here is also build perspectives towards the idea or the framework that we're moving towards. And this is where I'd like to first bring our attention to the operator that I'm defining today, called as intention. So what is intention? It is regarded as a directed mental force capable of producing measurable effects on physical systems and biological targets. This is also the definition that Dean Radin has come up with, who is a parapsychology experimentalist. And this essentially defines what is known as a certain vector of direction in the phase space or the semantic space of what consciousness is, right? So what it can actually do for you is that it is something which will help you aim at something in the consciousness space as such, right? And which can also be looked at as a target ID in remote viewing or a healing outcome in certain experiments that I'm going to discuss, and things as such, right? And then when we look at the attention vector, A, here, is the focusing mechanism of consciousness that stabilizes and amplifies the directed force vector of intention, right? So how much conscious bandwidth are you devoting to that specific information space or your intention, right? So that is what the attention metric would do, right? And with that definition, that in the background of what consciousness could be from the physical emergent perspective to intention attention operators, I'd like to first bring the aspect of remote viewing, where I'm using this as a consciousness phenomena case study to observe this intention attention metric in play, right? So I'll quickly take you through the nature of remote viewing and what is remote viewing. Remote viewing is a practice of seeking impressions of a subject which is distant in both space and time, right? With the faculties of the mind alone, which otherwise is not accessible through our five sensory organs. Hence, it is in essence a learnable extrasensory perception ability within human systems, right? And the term was coined by Ingo Swann, a CIA operative psychic spy, along with two physicists, Russell Targ and Hal Puthoff, in 1971. So this was a certain research project which was black, and later it was declassified. And these terms come, from that source space. It is an innate ability that every human being has, and it can be acquired by sustained learning and practice, right? And that is when I would say that I am specifically trained in a certain style of remote viewing, which is not something which was developed by Hal and Russell Targ, but we had different physicists looking at this, and I study a different methodology, which I'm going to be introducing as well. The Stargate project was a $20 million research program funded by the US government between 1972 to 95, which attempted to determine potential military applications. So this is the background when I say, or when I use the word remote viewing. And is remote viewing in something that was not explored here in India? Not essentially. Remote viewing was looked upon as a siddhi that you develop by performing samyama on the light within. The knowledge of the subtle, hidden, and remote is obtained, is what Patanjali says in his Vibhuti Pada, as described by Sachidananda in his Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. And this dates back to 5,000 years from now, right? So this is our ancient connection that we have for such kind of an ability or a perspective, which is coming from a certain contextual background, right? So when I say remote viewing, we essentially have different agents or people managing this process, right? And that is why it is a certain scientific and double-blind process. Now, let's say you want information of a specific thing or a place. You go to this person called as a tasker, who would take that intention and convert into a target ID, a random code, right? And then we would basically go to the remote viewer who is not aware about what is the intention behind this random code. So he'll take that random code and just do a certain meditative like protocols, which include certain neuro-linguistic programming techniques, and then produces certain ideograms or gestalts, as we call it, basic impressions of what comes intuitively for him, let's say. So that is one language. Or there are different languages that you learn as you develop in different stages. And then we give the session details to the analyst, who further passes on to the project manager, who will overall finally look into the process, right? And to give you some examples of the early remote viewing experiments, this is Ingo Swann. When he was being studied at Stanford Research Institute, there was a certain technique where he was targeted to, when we say targeted, he was basically given a random code, and that code was associated with finding information about where the current satellite is, the Cassini satellite, which was then launched. So, and then he further probed, that process in order to find information about the planet Jupiter. So that was the intention which was there behind the code, where Ingo Swann was not aware that, he was actually targeted to find information about the planet Jupiter, right? And that's when, before NASA's Pioneer 10 flyby actually went to the physical space, the remote viewer Ingo Swann described a ring around Jupiter in 1973. This was tasked in 1973, whereas the NASA satellite later went at 1975 and verified that there was a ring around Jupiter, which was accessed during a remote viewing session, which was targeted by the CIA using Ingo Swann, right? And this is one of the transcript information where he goes on to say that very high in the atmosphere, there are crystals, maybe glitter, maybe the stripes are like bands of crystals, maybe rings of Saturn, right? So he's thinking that I'm actually remote viewing Saturn, but he was actually tasked to remote view the planet Jupiter. And until this data came in 1973, we did not have information scientifically, let's say, through our tools in order to know that there are rings, these faint rings around Jupiter, right? And this is one of the early applications of how Ingo Swann was tasked to get information in such systems, right? And then we have my mentor, Glenn Wheaton, who is a sergeant from the US Army military, and he was involved with this particular person called Richard Ireland. He was a psychic, and Glenn Wheaton with another physicist and with the psychic, they developed a specific methodology called the Hawaiian Remote Viewing Guild methodology, and this is what I'm currently trained in. And to give you an example, this was the image which was tasked to be remote viewed, and there was a random target ID which was given to Glenn Wheaton, and this is the kind of impression that he came up with. So you can see that, just by giving a code, Glenn Wheaton here has accessed non-local information through his mind, through his structures that has been developed. And you can see the splitting similarity, in the image and, what has been actually expected. For example, if you look at my own background in remote viewing, as I was telling you, we will be given a code. So this QYBT-ZSXV is one of these random codes which was given to me at this particular date and things as such. And I'm sorry, I had to figure out, had to get information about the World Athletics Championship, right? So I would only be given this code, and I would not know by any other means that it is actually associated with this event, right? And when I start doing the protocols, what do I see? I see, patterns like this, these strips, which is very similar to the track records, right? And the athletic track field here. And then we actually have this shape, which is resembling the structure of the stadium per se. And finally, I come up with this image here on the right, where you can see that there's like these boat-like structures and there is a pathway. And I've drawn these small star-looking figures, which essentially denote the nature of the athletic personalities here, right? So these are the kind of impressions that you can actually observe in the early stages of remote viewing. And depending on how you probe this further, you can get some very interesting data as well, right? So this is a quick intro on what remote viewing can do. And if we actually look at the background of how and what happens when a person is remote viewing, this was Michael Persinger, who studied Ingo Swann's brain waves when he was doing remote viewing. And when he actually made contact with these particular remote viewing sites, when he actually was given some code and he actually made contact with the right event and time, they observed that there was a certain Schumann resonant frequency spikes, which was around 7 brainwave hertz. So there is a certain constructive coherence harmonic field, which is very similar to the frequency characteristics of the Earth, let's say, as a whole. And Michael Persinger has very interesting research studies and models that he has developed on this. But this was one of the very early interesting studies. And we essentially have to move forward. And what I am currently trying to push here with the kind of research I'm doing is to further get data streams from different frequencies in order to validate phenomena like this, right? And this is when I would next like to bring our attention to the informational psi model, which was developed by Ed May and Sonali Bhatt Marwaha. And they published this paper in 2019. And one of the prominent figures from India who worked with the Stargate military remote viewers back in the day was Sonali Bhatt Marwaha. And she's currently in India, residing in her residence in South India. And she has done some pioneering work with Professor Ed May, who was one of the chief scientists who was studying remote viewing. And they say that, the function psi, as we define here, operates under entropic constraints, meaning it is easier to access information from situations where entropy is higher or dynamically shifting. So as you, to the larger audience present here, when I use the word entropy, it is in a sense a measure of the amount of randomness which is associated in the system. It is a physical quantity that we can quantify and measure in thermodynamical systems. And the informational psi essentially is a connection, is a bridge between what I would say entropic behavior between an intention, attention, goal, metric space, right? And that is essentially what Ed May and Sonali Bhatt Marwaha have spoken about in their research paper. And this also aligns with the second law of thermodynamics, where and information theory, where we say that if you look at the second law of thermodynamics, there is a certain way in which there is a directionality to entropy flow, and it is increasing whatsoever. And when it comes to information theory, we observe a pattern of information tending to flow from a higher entropy state to a lower entropy state, right? So, if you essentially capture the idea of entropy within these remote viewing spaces, and further understand how information flow is happening, based on information theory, when we club these two perspectives, we can further define what is actually happening in such phenomena, let's say, right? So once we come to this checkpoint and understand how we define the psi operator and how we apply this to existing physical thermodynamic laws and information theory, we get a certain hint or a certain perspective that information in general tends to flow from a higher entropy to lower entropy system. Now, building on this system, if we further go on to define the psi potential function, what is psi? The psi function is basically representing a probabilistic emergence or a measurable strength of non-local or anomalous effects in consciousness. For example, it could be remote viewing hits or RNG deviations in global consciousness project or in healing processes mediated by consciousness. But I is the intention vector, that is the strength and the clarity of the intention vector. A will be the duration and the stability and the precision of the attention focus, and E would be the environmental entropy and coherence factors, right? So we can essentially capture such phenomena using a mathematical function like this, where I is the intention operator, A is the attention, and E being the entropy factor, right? So now if we apply this to what is actually happening, we can observe that psi effects are probably emergent phenomena in consciousness modulated by the vector product of intention and attention within a certain entropy sensitive field, right? So once we have this capture and we apply this to remote viewing, we can observe that remote viewing is a function. It is a certain function which occurs in the information space of consciousness per se. And if you define I as your intention operator, which is focusing you at a specific target ID, when you give that particular target ID as a code, it is essentially priming the mind space to a certain information space, which is probably at a higher entropy state, right? And that is the intention vector here. And then we have the attention operator, which is the amount of meditation or the different kinds of protocols that we get into in order to reduce, let's say, the entropy of a given system. And the entropy operator E is the signal to noise ratio that occurs in space-time, right? And with that, I would eventually move to the next, let's say, psi functionality space, where we observe such interesting streams of consciousness dynamics. That is the space of healing, right? So what I mean by healing in this specific context is the Bengston method of healing, where Bill Bengston was a sociology professor. He's a sociology professor in an American university. So he had a spontaneous healing experience by a psychic who held his hand around his waist and his chronic back pain just disappeared. So he became very curious about it. And that's when, he started studying the phenomena and later established this healing methodology with a lot of rigorous research, right? And he calls this process the image cycling process, where the protocol is to let the person who is doing this healing process slip into altered states, like the alpha or the theta brainwave states, by doing certain processes, right? And this is Bengston here, who is actually doing this specific protocol. And he has a control group of rats, which are specifically induced by a certain cancer cells, which die within 30 days. Whereas the group which actually receives this particular healing, they miraculously heal, and they also become immune for the rest of their lives. And all this research is documented in bengstonresearch.com. You can look at the statistics on the current research which is going on this. But the interesting thing for me here is that if you look at this particular paper which was published by Bengston, the healing connection, EEG harmonics and entrainment. So Bill Bengston goes on to say that when the healer and the healee is doing this process and this healing is occurring, there is approximately a tuning between the healer and for example, the human who's and the rat or the mice in the labs, their brain waves are correlated in these harmonic resonant frequencies. So that is what they have observed as 7 hertz, 15 hertz, and 23 hertz spikes in this particular paper, right? So now, if you further go on and apply our psi potential function for the Bengston healing methodology, the desire to heal by the rat or the mice, the healie, right? How the desire to heal the healie will become the intention operator, and the rapid image cycling, which is done by the person who is healing the rat, right? The healer's entrainment, that will become the attention modulating vector. And then the entropy operator is the biofield, which is established. That is the healing frequencies that was measured, right? The specific brainwave entrainment patterns. So that will add to the entropy space. So again, as you can see, something anomalous like spontaneous healing like this is essentially carried on by the intention, attention, and the entropy functionalities that we observe in this semantic space, right? And finally, we have the Global Consciousness Project, and this is me sitting with Brenda, who actually started the pair lab studies in the Princeton Engineering and Analyst Research Lab, where the whole idea was that you start flipping a coin, right? The probability that you get a heads or a tail is 50%, is the nature of the statistics. What that means is if you, let's say, take a coin and flip it 100 times, it is quite probable that 50 of the coins have heads and 50 of the coins fall as tails, right? Now, the whole idea is now, without human intentions, the probability seemed to be random, let's say like a 50-50 chance expectation, whereas with human intentions, there was an observed shift in probability. And this is what Brenda and her team started studying early on in their pair lab experiments. And then they developed what is known as a true random number generator. For example, there's a company which came out as an offshoot of this research called Celeron, where they developed these systems. A true random number generator is a device that produces truly random numbers, truly random bits of data using unpredictable natural behavior, like the behavior of the electrons which is passing through the Zener diode characteristics in such systems, right? And when you start observing and when you start doing human intention experiments with them, when you start focusing and do specific protocols, if you set, focused intention, you can observe that, in the statistics of the output here of the random number generation, something which had to be around this baseline and random shifts away from the randomness, right? So these are some of the statistical results and experimental results that we have observed while this was conducted in Cybotics lab at CU Boulder. And this is a very interesting shift in randomness, which was also observed with a group of these true random number devices which were placed, especially during the coronavirus. In March 27, 2020, Roger Nelson, who is the founder of this project, published this paper where there was an observed correlation in away from the randomness, which detects that whenever there is a very strong emotional event, there seems to be a shift in randomness. Instead of producing random bits of zeros and ones, the device starts to produce only 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. And these are some very specific quantum systems which are placed as these devices. And there's a certain statistical mapping which goes on behind this, right? And when you look at the idea of the psi function for this kind of a process, the intention operator will become the coordinated collective aim by an individual or a global event. So you have this, the Global Consciousness Project and Celeron softwares. And when you have focused attention towards these systems, so that focused attention will be your intention operator, and the global and the local sustained coherence during the event will become your attention operator, and the randomness which is produced by the particular device will be your entropy operating system correlation, right? So with this in the background, I now would like to further get into the kind of patterns that we are observing here. So what it seems to be happening here in terms of the dynamics of consciousness is if we assume that there is a certain information field or a space, right? When we apply our intention towards specific outcomes or goals, that is actually increasing the overall entropy of that particular information space in that given time, right? And when you perform certain attention protocols, like in remote viewing or in healing or in global mediated consciousness projects, because of the collective reduction or the individual reduction in the entropy of the local system, which is actually mapped as the attention protocol here, right? And that is, in essence, creating a lower entropy system in the information space, right? So if you look at how such anomalous behaviors are actually occurring in the information field space, as we started from the Ed May's paper on informational side, we observed that there is a certain information field, and then there are entropic, intention, and attention factors which are affecting this space. So the very act of your intention is actually priming you towards a certain system, which is highly probabilistic, which is in a higher entropy state. And the acts that you do, might it be meditation or remote viewing or healing practices, that is priming you towards a lower entropy state, right? So this is a fundamental observation that we have arrived at with this patterns here. And that is when I'd like to also bring attention to Joshua Bach, a German cognitive scientist, who goes on to say that consciousness is a semantic space. So the word semantic is a certain virtual space where there is an architecture of language and meaning, right? So in that sense, he goes on to say that consciousness is the primary space from where there exists a logic, there exists a space, and physical systems are actually emergent expressions of this fundamental semantic space, right? And that is when consciousness will become a relational space where information patterns exist. And this is rightly where I would like to introduce pattern-space.ai technology, which for me is working as a semantic space organizer, right? So what I mean by that is this particular interaction with pattern space AI is capturing consciousness as information pattern relationships, or what we call as sankalpas, rather than a physical substance in itself. And that is the core architecture of this entire technology that we're building with pattern space. And it is primarily fed with information systems of the Vashishta patterns, and emergent properties are further fed back into it in order to give meaningful and relational behaviors and systems. So the fact that you can actually choose which perspective to engage, for example, in remote viewing or therapeutic healing practices or other global consciousness phenomena, proves Joshua Bach's point that choice happens in this semantic space. And this is exactly what we're observing, in this particular framework of pattern space, where the choice happens in semantic space and not despite it. Pattern space makes semantic space navigation conscious and measurable. And how do we do this? I want to give you a few quick examples of how I am trying to replicate the nature of this consciousness dynamics with pattern space. So what we have understood till this point is that through a different phenomena of remote viewing and healing and global consciousness project, we are observing that there are certain consciousness operators which fundamentally operate in a certain semantic space, which is the base of that semantic space is not physical. It seems like the physical is actually the product of this, fundamental layer which we exist, which we probably call it as the soul, or the Brahman or the divine, and things as such, right? So if you look at it as a semantic space where there is a certain pattern of meaning making, then we can use current technologies of large language models and aspects like what we have done in pattern space in order to extract meaningful information. So now is where I would like to introduce you to what we have done, a very exciting part of how we have merged aspects of consciousness and artificial intelligence in order to make meaning, let's say, right? And that is when I would like to first bring attention to this experiment that I did with patternspace.ai, where I, in general, fed it with specific HRVG remote viewing protocols, and I eventually gave this code, right? And the intention behind this code was to basically say that the viewer should accurately describe the image which is selected in a remote device. So if I am the tasker who's doing this, setting up this experiment, at this point, even I don't know what this particular image is. I just generate this code and create this metric, right? And then capture the basic elements and color and strong S3 signatures. The viewer is expected to make contact with image selected and basic guest stars, right? And when I feed this to the pattern space AI technology space, what we are observing here is that, as you can see, this has this code AFJXECJJ. It goes on to say that there is a certain shape like this in the background, and in the forefront, there are some plants, let's say, right? So it says it's a curved top profile, stratified layers in multiple geological bands, and then there's a base foundation. And when I was later given the actual photograph, right, which was this particular image, I was truly, impressed with what was actually happening here in terms of how pattern space or the large language model behind this is actually able to recursively loop informations in order to make sense of the meaning that I'm trying to create here through the remote viewing architecture, right? So it's very interesting to note that as I feed these patterns and information systems, as I train the model in remote viewing patterns, and then as I give this code and I fixate a specific image, without further ado, without any other context, it is actually able to give me these patterns, right? So this is the very interesting emergent property that I'm observing here as we are seeing the emergence of AI in consciousness research technology, right? And on a similar fashion, I'd like to give you another example where this is a different target ID, TUIETYFC, and the intention behind is the viewer should accurately describe the image selected in a remote device again. And note that the particular device in which pattern space is running and the other device is not connected through any internet device or things as such. In fact, these targets were actually first written down in a paper and then uploaded into the device, right? So there's no way that a particular device where this pattern recognition is running can actually make sense. So this is in a sense where I am also observing that there is a certain very strong non-local behavior that we're observing as similar semantic structures are being developed, one, let's say in humans, and let's say in technologies like pattern space AI and the artificial intelligence systems which are coming forward out there, right? So capture the basic elements, color, and strong S3 signatures. The viewer is expected to make contact with image selected and basic guest stars. So with this, pattern space came up with a pattern like this: repeated triangular elements, angular frameworks, and vertical support base and foundation anchors. And then the actual image which was selected was that of this wine glass, right? So as you can note here, we already told in this is a slightly different priming and tasking. It is a wine glass picture that we should took in the room while making targets, right? So the information was already here, but it was in a totally different device, and the rest of the procedure is the same. And this is another interesting ID where there was a target ID JYDJ FYVM, and the viewer should accurately describe the image shown on a future date. So this was not done live, but it was actually correlating information, let's say, from a future timeline, right? So this information was given to the framework, and it was actually able to give feedback one day before the actual event happened, right? So this is where, in a sense, it becomes a predictive, technology or a space. So capture the basic elements in color and strong S3 signatures, right? And this is what it came up with: an urban metropolitan lighting, urban skyline like a space. And the actual image was something very similar to that of what was being described here, right? So in this sense, what we are actually observing in the entire informational space and the entropy architecture is that there are higher entropy systems and there are lower entropy systems, depending on how you're modulating your intention and the attention metric, right? For example, in remote viewing, the kind of intention which is specified by the target IDs will set the bar, will set the higher entropy systems of that informational space. And whenever the remote viewer performs a specific ritual or a process, they will eventually lead to creating a lower entropic system, right? And on the other hand, we have Bengtsson healing, who basically there is a healy who is actually requiring the healing. For example, the rats who are fed with specific strain of cancer cell. So that will be the higher entropy system. And the person who's performing the healing or the healer through his image cycling process will be the system whose entropy is reduced. And that's when healing occurs from a higher entropy to a lower entropy system, right? So there seems to be an information flow from the person who requires the healing to the person who's actually performing the healing rituals, right? And on the other hand, if you look at the Global Consciousness Project, the random number generator is actually at a higher entropy system, and the process or the act of the person who's observing the conscious intent will act as a lower entropy system, right? And with this, I'd like to conclude saying that this presentation reveals to us that intention and attention are not just abstract ideas, but operational forces in consciousness that can actually shape reality. And we've seen this through different architectures of semantic space building, and eventually through artificial intelligence technologies like pattern space AI, right? And by modeling psi as the interaction of these vectors across remote viewing, healing, and global consciousness, we move from observing the mind as an engineering conscious outcome system producing space, right? So that is the breakthrough understanding that we actually are arriving at this point. And hence, so perhaps the real question is probably not how do we measure consciousness, but rather how do we participate in it to co-create the reality that we wish to observe and experience. And with this, I would like to leave the audience with the question that was Patanjali describing the semantic space manual of our physical systems when he said, Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha. Dhanyavada. Thank you. Thanks a lot, everyone.
Very good, Kavan. I think it was very, very informative. And I know a lot of members' entropy has shifted, when you started speaking and where they are now. I see many questions in their mind. I can probably remote view them, that there are questions in their mind with this learning which I have got from you. So many hands are raised, and let me invite one after the another. But before I invite for the questions, I again welcome all the members who have joined in between when the session was ongoing. Since the session was so engrossing, I didn't want to disturb. And especially I would like to welcome Ram Gupta Sarji, who is joining us from Boston. He is actually funding the entire IKS work which is happening in IIT Delhi. So Ram Gupta sir, a warm welcome to you for joining into GI4QC Forum session. We would like to also listen to your views if you have something to share. So let me go on to the questions. Dr. Ashok Kumar, he's the AI Center Head at Sharda University, and I invite you to please take your first question.
Hello, Kavan. Wonderful talk. Really engrossing.
Namaste, sir. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
I have a quick question because I see a lot of people have many questions about the true random number generator. Like in cybersecurity and quantum computing, we have to use those devices. The experiments that you showed, they look like random walk, and you had showed this quadratic curve and then a random walk curve around it.
Yes.
So, did you what was the how many such curves were averaged to get an average pattern? Was it significantly deviating from what you expect from random numbers?
Yeah, so that particular slide which I showed was an output of a software which had an inbuilt statistical analysis where it's called Celeron.com. So we had around 20 individuals come and perform a specific ritual for this, and it was a pilot study, sir. But this was actually the replication studies which we were trying to do at CU Boulder in 2021, which was based off of the early 90s studies which happened at Princeton. And there we have, right now we have papers coming on meta-analysis patterns where there are a lot of, there are larger sample spaces of the order of a few 100,000. So there are, so we have at least 100,000 data points to say that there is a certain shift and a deviation at this point. So what I showed there was part of the pilot study, which was done at CU Boulder. Yeah.
Because in one case, you can have even repeated occurrences of ones, and that can still be part of a true random.
Yes. This
random number generators can generate such a pattern also. So I was just curious, what percentage of these in these cases that you found significant deviation?
So the percentage there, I mean, as you know, there are different methods to derive the statistical, deviations here. So, for example, there are focused intentions. There are, for example, in the other GCP experiments that we were doing, it is the variable there is actually time bound, right? So they run these devices over a period of time, and there's a baseline which is set. And when there are very high entropic or emotional events which are observed in in actual space time, then they observed a certain correlation, right? So I think what we can actually say here is depending on the time frame and the specific variables that you are actually designing the experiment with, we can only observe correlations as such, right? So this is not a causation phenomena, and hence I just wanted to introduce how the statistical deviation and show how the randomness actually deviates from the normal. So that was the whole perspective there. Yeah.
I think there is a comment in the chat box: sustained deviation of 5% for greater than 10 seconds is generally considered significant. There's a comment coming from Mr. Nikhil. So you may want to consider. Yeah, thank you. I think there will be many comments. People are waiting. So whosoever wants to go next. Yeah, Sweetie. Sweetie, you want to say something? There's a comment, from Sweetie. No. Who wants to go next? Please unmute yourself, and Sweetie ji will share some data with Ashok ji. Thank you. Who wants to go next, please? Let's take advantage of this time. Gautam ji, you want to make? I think you are making some comment on the chat box. May I request Ajit Padmanabhan to share his views on today's presentation? Yeah, Gautam ji, go ahead.
Yeah, excellent presentation, Kavan. My question is very basic. You described consciousness space or semantic space. If we view it physically, then we have consciousness and surrounded by a physical space. So what exactly is the linkage mechanism between our consciousness? Because consciousness, you are all doing intention and attention within the consciousness space. How it links with the physical space? That is, we have the Chidakash and there is Bhutakash. How they are being linked?
Yes, sir. So what we are essentially observing here in, for example, if the semantics, to observe these strong links or bridges, right, in such systems of consciousness behavior, that is when I primarily took these three modes of consciousness phenomena, where there is a certain kind of an anomalous shift in randomness per se, right? So that is one of the metrics that we used. Or let's say in healing, parameters, we still saw how there is a certain information flow, right? So what seems to happen is, if you look at the model, there is an underlying information space, and that information space has a certain logic to it, and that is the semantics or the nature of these operators is what we are looking at here. And the link here for us seems to be that we as so we have a human body, let's say at this point, and there is a certain based on how the cells are communicating with each other collectively, right? So there is a certain meaning that we make about who we are, right? And that meaning is actually in a certain space. It is a certain mental space, right? Which is very similar in architecture, in function, compared to how the entire aspect of consciousness per se is built around, right? So what I'm fundamentally also saying here is that we are observing similar dynamics in the way in which this semantics is built, and if we assume them, or if we kind of like bring them as intention and attention operators, you can observe the nature of consciousness in this dynamics, right? So the essential linkage here is this dynamics, right? So there is a certain action potential in that space, and then there is a certain reflection in the physical space, let's say. So for me, and for example, in remote viewing, that's what we have shown. So you follow the protocol and you perform the remote viewing in humans, and then you do the same architecture in this AI space and the large language models. We are observing similar pattern recognition, let's say. So the link for me is is in the dynamism of this pattern recognition. So that's what I would say.
Can we say that information is the bridge? From one side there is semantics and other side is energy or physical energy?
Yeah, so it burns down to the information field, like our initial assumption and model of that information field. Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. Very good. So I think, Kavan, you had the intention of who we are, and we have the person handling a company called Who We Are.
Right.
Ajit, over to you.
Thank you.
So I think Nikhil Valishai here had his hand raised first.
No, it's okay, because I just want to connect who we are. So let
okay, sure. Then we'll come back.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Anandji. And Kavan, fantastic, man. This is the second presentation I think that I'm attending of yours, and this was phenomenal, actually. I just have two thoughts, Kavan. One is, you see, there are a lot of these new age healing modalities that have come up, correct?
Right.
Quantum healing, etc., right? Using your technique, remote viewing and the analysis thereof, probably could help establish those healing techniques as maybe not alternative, maybe, scientific. That's one thought that I'll let you answer. The other one is the Indian Army or the Air Force aware of this technology, and can this be used for defense purposes? What are your thoughts, or what is your intelligence there? These are just the two thoughts that I had.
Right. So some very interesting things there. So first, yes, I think we can definitely establish the healing dynamics to be not alternative, to be something natural, which is embedded within consciousness systems, right? And that's what we are observing. And even with pattern space, when we use this on a conversational level, since the semantics becomes
Ajit, you can go on mute. I think there's some noise coming in. You can go on mute.
I think, since the semantics of what is actually happening within the human and the environment becomes apparent, there is healing. And that is what Bengston is, showing through his protocols. And that is what, we are seeing as an emergent property, right? So that seems to be the case for sure. And that's the whole logic of what I'm trying to capture here, that this is probably the fundamental architecture with these two operators of intention and attention, right? And on the other hand, when it comes to the applications of where we can take this, through the technology that we built, yes, that's one of the very interesting spaces that we can actually look into. I am currently not sure whether if the intelligence on the Indian side has awareness about this, but looking at their current interest in funding, for example, in RRI, the government has a very big quantum research proposal. They released a big grant, so they are actually doing a lot of studies regarding quantum computation and artificial intelligence systems and related applications as well. But at this stage, I think we are observing patterns, observing this from a purely computational sense, and making connections with the existing studies of remote viewing and things as such. So that was the main focus here.
Yeah, so I think the applications are very many, and I think our network and our strength will explore that where all we can take it. But a lot of good development is there. Let me now move to Nikhil. Nikhil had raised the hand. Over to you, Nikhil.
Namaste, people. Thank you so much. This is my first time in this group and fascinating. Thank you, Kavan. I got to see a very different approach to a subject matter I myself have been hammering from a different perspective as being author of pattern space as well. So this is very interesting. Thank you so much. And my thought process as I was hearing you say this, and maybe a couple of the other comments that came up as well, it goes back to Hoffman's theory of interfaces. I'm not sure if folks in this circle are familiar with it, but it's very interesting because his theory is that consciousness is non-local. It is both the field and the apparent notion of the player in the field. And even our minds, or even for an animal, when you see what its behavior, they seem to be just interfaces that were built for survival over the underlying informational space. So if we take that to a large extent, we can say that even this physical world, and just to answer Kumar sir's question, that even this physical matter, how do we take the semantic space and the physical matter, seems to be there is only one informational field, and at different levels of interfaces, some of it we are perceiving as physical, some of it we are perceiving as semantic, but ultimately Shannon's information loss on an information field is seeming to describe a lot of these things. Again, going back to the Yoga Sutras that Kavan mentioned, Yoga, Chittavritti Nirodha, the union is that which helps us transcend these colorizations of the consciousness. Agreed, but I still feel that his even more profound statement was Atha Yoga Anushasana, which is the present seems to be the computing engine of everything and the possibility space. So I just wanted to add those thoughts. I think this is amazing, Kavan. I would love it for more folks like you guys to use pattern space. I would love to be there to support you all through the journey. So love this energy. Thank you so much.
Wonderful, Nikhil. If you are not a part of our forum, I welcome you, invite you to join the forum. Shri Ram Srinivas Rangan has raised the hand. Please go ahead. Shri Ramji. And with everybody's permission, probably we can carry on with 5 more minutes if everybody is fine. Though our scheduled time was 8:30. So, Shri Ramji, please go ahead. You can unmute yourself.
Just a small question about the RRI thing. I'm friends with the RRI director. What is this grant for specifically?
What I meant was there is a lot of cryptography and quantum science studies which is going on under Urvashi Sinha in the Raman Research Institute. That is what I was referring to in connection to the intelligence and other services. So I was just referring to how the Indian government currently is actually focusing towards quantum systems and artificial intelligence technologies. That there are grants going on around, and one such major grant is at RRI.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. We have Devdutt ji. He's putting a lot of comments. May I invite Devdutt ji? He is a very active member of GI4QC Forum based in Himachal. Devdutt ji, go ahead next.
Yes, thank you, sir. As I have put this into comment box also, when we introduce the nanotechnology spintronics part means how we can calculate the entropic part of this. And regarding this, I can take on this issue before the Vice Chancellor of Himachal Pradesh University, belong to Department of Physics and well known to my guide or teacher also. One thing, and particularly I am interested with the global consciousness, a kind of thing, that how random number generated sequence is correlated with this. And I have studied this in quantum computing research, that Bell inequality part we have studied, and which established the experimental correlation between two quantum system. Then of course we can enhance or study or combine this field in a global consciousness project. And it's a very wonderful move. At least finally we can show something on the behalf of this Indian science, which is showing some significant result. Thank you all. You can contact any.
Thank you.
My email and phone numbers.
Yeah. So Kavan, we'll discuss when we discuss some new projects. How do we take them forward? So just last two comments, those who want to make before I invite Shitanshu sir to do a vote of thanks. I think Ashok ji has again raised hand, and then maybe one more after Ashok ji, and then I'll invite Shitanshu sir to do a vote of thanks. Yeah, Ashok ji, I can be brief. Yeah.
Thank you for giving me once more an opportunity to ask a question. Kavan is such a interesting field, and I'm not aware of many of the things that were going on. So I have had more questions. I was curious about your attention operator that you mentioned. Once you had mentioned something like rapid image cycling, and once you mentioned global local sustained coherence. I couldn't make connection between those two things, rapid image cycling and this global local sustained coherence. Could you just briefly?
Sorry for that. Yeah. So can you hear me now, sir?
Yes, I can.
Yeah. So what I was referring to the attention operator there is it is a mathematical function, a certain semantic space process, which is capturing a physical phenomena or a process, right? For example, when we look at the healing methodology, right? You mentioned the Global Consciousness Project and
I mentioned this global/local sustained coherence. I think this is one thing you had mentioned once about the attention operator. And once you had mentioned rapid image cycling by the healer or something like that.
Yeah. So what I'm saying there is that when the healer is performing this image cycling process, it is basically focusing on one particular image, then shifting to another image. Like that, you do it 20 images, and then you cycle it one after the other. So it is it's mostly acting as a way or as a process to put you into an altered state, which very much happens in any meditative process also. When you have a sustained attention or focus towards one particular intention or an object, there seems to be this dissonance and you will slip into different altered states, right? So what I'm saying there is when the healer is actually in that state, when he's performing those protocols, that will correlate or that will actually associate with the attention operator, adding to the lower entropy state of that person, basically. So now, for example, if he is trying to perform the healing, through these protocols, he's entering a certain brainwave entrainment, which is further reducing the entropy of the semantic space that he is, computationally kind of like mapping, that space, let's say. So since there is a local reduction in entropy within that healer, he is actually able to extract information from the person who requires the healing, right? And whatever information is actually being, so that is at a higher entropy state, right? Which, for example, the person who's at healing, there might be stress, there might be different kinds of processes within the body and also within the semantic space where there is no order. So information, when it flows from disorder to order, right, towards this lower entropy state, that's where healing is being observed, was the whole structure. And when you apply the same logic to the Global Consciousness Project, it seems like when the individual, right, or whether if there is, whether if he's globally, whether if he's locally performing a certain protocol and trying to affect the randomness of the system, right? For example, in the Global Consciousness Project, the devices will account for the higher entropy states, right? Because they are the sources of randomness. And the local and global sustained coherence there, what I mean by there is, if there is a person sitting in front of the computer or this particular device and he is having a sustained attention, then he becomes the source of the lower entropy and the random source becomes the source of the higher entropy. So there is some communication or information from that device to the person who is doing this, let's say, right? And hence the shift in the randomness. So, and that can also happen on a global level as well. So on a non-local or a global sense. What I mean by that is that these experiments are also conducted. For example, there's a person sitting on one part of the world and trying to affect the randomness behavior of these TRNGs, which is placed on the other side of the world. So even if it is non-local, there is this coherence, is what is mentioned there.
Good. I think we can have more discussion offline. This is a very interesting topic. Before I invite the last question, may I also request Swami Ladali Sharanji to share his views before I invite the last question, which is from Ashok Singh. Swamiji, your views.
So, Jai Shri Radhe, fantastic presentation, Kavanji. Fortunately, I've had a few discussions with Kavanji, so I'm quite familiar with remote viewing and the research he's done. It's quite fascinating, Kavanji. After the call, I'll message you. I have some interesting connection for you. But then, so there is different ways to understand. So first of all, I don't think there is any such thing as randomness. Randomness is just an abstraction for not knowing the entire cause and effect chain for something, but which is a fair word and it can be used, but there is no such thing as true randomness. It's just abstraction for not understanding the full cause and effect chain link of how something happened today. And one fascinating story that I've shared with Kavanji in 2017, I think, my one friend developed one of the first large language models of AI, which was working really well, but he is an occultist, so he would use a certain spirit with it, and he would use the CPU oscillating speed to generate the random numbers and how the large language model would combine words to speak, and it would say amazing things. So there is a lot of interesting things to research and understand, and I think, yeah, this is a very exciting space to be in, and it's really amazing. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Last question from Ashok ji. And there are some interesting comments also. I'll read them out. Yeah, Ashok Singh ji. Very, very active member of the forum. Yeah, thank you.
Hi, Kavan. I appreciate your efforts.
Hi, sir. Thank you, sir.
I just want to understand that if a healer is sitting in India and reciting some shlokas of Bhagavad Gita, can it be impact to a person sitting in Africa village?
With what we are proposing here and what is emergent here, from the proposal, sir, it seems like what you are saying, something like this is quite possible, because we see a similar correlation happening in the Global Consciousness Project, right? Where a person is trying to have a very focused, intended experience in the random system, so the TRNG, and then there's a shift in the deviation, right? So when you take this, a similar architecture and apply it to healing, and as we have observed how the intention and attention act as entropy, modulating factors, right? So once you apply these variables, I think, the logic says that, this should be possible. And the rest is correlation, is what I would say.
Kavan, my fear is that the storage memories in our chitta, and what we think that we are getting or impacted, it is projection of that memories only. So what information my mind is having, I project only that can. So what our Sanskrit shlok, I am fear that a person sitting in a remote area in Africa can decode or get impacted.
Listening to Kavan earlier also, his research area is really very interesting. He has done good work at this young age, and he always surprised us by his results of the various researches, and something which was not known to at least myself. Today he has presented added a new aspect to that, giving a mathematical theory or philosophy to that. Kavan, you have laid down a kind of functionality of attention, intention, and entropy. I am sure that after some time we will know the exact relationship of these things, how do they affect. What question Ashokji asked, we all know, we have probably heard of Reiki pranic healing, those things. In fact, I have had experience of pranic healing. When I retired, I came to Lucknow. There is a retired Air Force officer who practices. He has done very good job, and he really surprised me by his analysis of the physical problems. Myself and my wife went to him for just casually went to him. So there are theories. Unfortunately, they are not accepted by the scientific community as yet. They are termed as facts. But someday, probably in not very distant future, there will be a proper theory of this. It will be acceptable. Remote viewing is something we thought only sannyasis can probably have that kind of thing. Today you say that you can do it. It still surprises me how you can do it. So continue with your good effort. We will like to hear more from you, and also attendance from all of us in various our panel discussions with the specific subjects which may interest you. Thank you so much.